everyone, I am Sania Farooqui and I'm thrilled to kickstart a new season of the Sania Farooqui Show in partnership with Doria Feminist Fund, the first feminist fund in the MENA region. It's an activist-driven fund that supports feminist movement building, knowledge production, collective learning in the Middle East and North Africa. Founded by feminist activist Muazzin Hassan, its core feminist principles are that of solidarity, collaboration, diversity, and community engagement. Joining us today, we have with us Rawan Kahwaji. She is an intersectional feminist activist in the Southwest Asian North African region, working as co-executive manager and advocacy coordinator at DARB. She is also currently studying women's study at Cairo Institute for Liberal Arts and Science. Rawan has been working in the aid sector for the past 8 years, focused on the Syrian crisis, a strong believer in the power of individuals to make a change. Rawan, thank you so much. Wonderful to have you on the Sania Farooqui Show today.
Thank you for having me, Sania.
You've been working in the Swana region and with DARB for quite some time now. Tell us a little about what you do and a little about the organization's work as well.
Okay, so as you mentioned, I'm working as the Advocacy and Communication Coordinator with DARB. I'm also co-leading the NGO with another colleague, since we have a co-executive management structure at DARB, and we believe that two is better than one in leading the NGO and ensuring that we have a woman and a man leading the NGO. So DARB is a youth-led, value-driven organization. We believe in society power for making democratic change and affecting the peace-building processes in Syria. So we support Syrians to launch their campaigns that tackle issues affecting sustainable peace and social change. We also provide a kit of trainings, workshops, dialogue sessions around conflict transformation, conflict resolution, peace building, active citizenship. We also work in context analysis and action research and advocacy. We have been working since 2014. We are based in Turkey and Syria. Okay. We also work on supporting social initiatives and voluntary groups with capacity building and technical support.
Okay, so talking a little about your work on the Syrian crisis, the United Nations has verified that at least 350,209 civilians and combatants were killed between March 2011 and March 2021. And it has also warned that this is an undercount of the actual number. Out of this, they have also said that 26,727 victims were women and 27,126 were children. Again, the undercount of an actual number here in this case as well. What is being done to protect women and children currently? What are the challenges, and why is the world failing to also do something about it?
Listening to the numbers is a bit unfortunate. I mean, and the worst that it is really, as you said, it's undernumbered. Lots of efforts that are going on right now on the political side, on the social side, on the humanitarian emergency response part as well. So we have activists and NGOs are working on deriving a political solution to put an end to what's happening in Syria right now, understanding that the conflict has been going for so long. But also working on finding a solution that would give justice back to the people, to the Syrian people and refugees that have been suffering for the past 11 years. We have also work that have been going on in northwest Syria, whether it was emergency response with providing and sheltering refugees there, working with providing, for example, winterization or support for families, cash support or in-kind support, for example, NFI kits and so on, hygiene kits and so on. We have also work that is done with women, especially like protection work regarding GBV and gender-based violence, or protection regarding the legal status and legal documentation, especially that we have many widows now, and in Syria, widows or women who lost their life partners in war. So we have NGOs and activists working on providing the care and the need, the awareness those women are in need of. We also have NGOs that working to provide education, school, or providing for financing schools in Northwest Syria to provide education for the children.
As you mentioned, it's now the 11th year. The Syrian refugee crisis remains the world's largest refugee and displacement crisis of our time. And now with the ongoing war in Ukraine, it's doing the same thing when it comes to adding numbers to this refugee humanitarian crisis. What are your comments on this? And you've lived through war and crisis. Are we still not learning the lessons that we should?
I mean, what's happening in Ukraine is tragic, and I feel sorry that someone else has to endure the same things that we lived through as Syrians, the same experience. But the first comment that come to mind when hearing about the refugee, or comparing the Syrian refugee crisis and the Ukrainian refugee crisis, is the racism and double standards in Europe that has been that surfaced with the Ukrainian crisis. We thought that as a human rights defenders, as EU countries have been long saying that, we wouldn't see or observe such of an open conversation, racist, white supremacist conversation around refugee crisis right now, especially that even with the Ukrainian crisis, the refugee crisis, we see that people of color or Black people have been facing a lot of challenges on the borders of Poland and other countries. So this is the first comment that comes to mind, but it's also good to remember that the aggressor is the same in both situations, in Ukraine and Syria. Russia have been playing a great role in escalating violence. In Syria, it has been fighting with the Syrian regime for the past 8 years, doing the same war strategies. And we have seen that Russia has bombed hospitals, schools, hadn't sheltered any civilians. It wasn't just a war against armed groups in Syria, it was a war against civilians. And we can easily see that the same is happening in Ukraine. So maybe it's a time for world leaders to put a stop to the same aggressor that have been conducting the second war now.
Yeah. And coming back to your work at DARB, tell us a little about the role of women in peace building and in the future of Syria.
It's good to thank you for the question. It's really something that we are focusing right now, not just as DARB, as the Syrian civil society. It's good to observe and remember and understand the importance that women plays in the whole Syrian society and the future of Syria. So not just on a political level, but also on a social level. Focusing on peace processes, we as NGOs, and we have to ensure that the spaces that we provide, for example, are inclusive for women, are gender sensitive. We have to ensure that when we talk about transitional justice, we are giving women are there. They are providing their perspective. They are providing their input on what justice mean for women, how we can build a more gender sensitive future like Syria, and how we can make our constitution more gender sensitive. Women are also providing a great input on how we can change the social structure to make sure that we can have a more inclusive society. Maybe it's also good to think about women role in advocating for detention, like for detainees, for women detainees in Syria, and how they are working on changing the social taboos that are around this issue, and this is a challenging issue for us in Syria. And how we can also work, and the women effort on ceasefire in Syria and stopping understanding the consequences that women go through with violence make us focus more or focus our work on the ceasefiring as well.
Young people make up around 1/3 of the population in Syria, including adolescents and youth. Adolescents and youth, an age group which has significantly been impacted by the conflict, and they've had to prematurely assume adulthood responsibilities, missing out on many opportunities, especially in learning and their own personal development. Education has been greatly impacted due to the conflict. What is being done to ensure the safety of adolescents and youth, their future, and also get them to be part of policies and advocacies when it comes to peace building in Syria?
So regarding this, the response for youth and young people in Syria, it's been like coming from a humanitarian experience, it's been challenging. It's always challenging to provide the safety to ensure that schools are functioning in a constant way, undisrupted. But that hasn't been the case for Syria. We have there is NGOs who are working to provide informal education in northwest Syria, but as I mentioned before, Russia hasn't been sheltering or have been targeting schools, so it's been a challenging process to provide constant, undisrupted education in Syria. We work on different NGOs work on providing informal education or financing school and repairing schools, or voluntary groups also work on, for example, providing psychosocial support psychosocial support and first aid support for kids in Syria, especially the young age. There has been some work on vocational training for youth who have missed their universities and they cannot to join or rehabilitate them to join the workforces, especially that they are sometimes the breadwinner of the family. But it's also good to remember here that young people, especially Syrians who are in northwest Syria, are not waiting for anyone to help them, but they are the ones leading initiatives that would tackle issues and solve problems in their societies. That we see that there are a lot of groups that are working voluntarily, for example, either with kids or to provide spaces for peer-to-peer learning or discussions, or spaces, even spaces to provide training in different or capacity building, for example, in HR or finance and other fields of work. We also, and going back to your part of question, which says how we can ensure that they are participating in policies. What we have to do as NGOs, I think, in my opinion, that we need to ensure that the spaces that we provide for those youths are as safe as possible, having to let go of even the pride that we have of someone, especially when we talk about elder people feeling that kind of parentship, let's say, feeling toward the youth. We have to let go of that so we can give youth the space that they need to provide their input and to lead the change that they want to see in their society.
Yeah. Coming to my last question, since we've been discussing women issues in this region quite a lot, after having survived this conflict in Syria, resettlement comes with its own set of challenges. You yourself have experienced a lot. Could you tell us a little about it and what can be done to make it simpler, make it easier for women to survive once they have already survived the conflict?
As someone who's been through this refuge journey, it's definitely uneasy and it's full of challenges and hardship. Being a refugee is challenging. Being a woman experienced refuge has a more of it. So we have issues like I am facing issues on multi-levels, and women are facing issues on multi-levels, whether it's economical, legal, social. We have issues with workspaces and places that are unsafe workspaces or environments. Women have been facing issues, economical issues, especially in the Turkish context. Especially if you are a widow or you lost your partner, so you have all the, you are mainly the breadwinner of the family, so having difficulties finding jobs or finding work opportunities in a new unwelcoming, to some extent, host community is challenging. Giving and upon that, we have workspaces that doesn't provide any legal support or legal or protection for women, is making women face a more, like, it's more challenging for them. We have also having, like, especially in the Turkish context, having no legal rights or clear legal rights makes it a bit hard to understand where do you stand, or who you can go whenever you are facing any protection, gender-based violence or other challenges here. We are facing problems in even the political process in Syria, ensuring that women are there on all the decision-making processes and are heard when we talk about the constitutional committee, for example, that's happening now in Geneva, ensuring that women are heard, women perspectives are heard and existed in civil work society, for example, in work policies here, having a gender exclusive workspaces. And different, this is some of what comes to mind, but the conversation can go long.
Yeah. All right. On that note, I'm going to say a big thank you for taking your time out and for coming on the Sania Farooqui show and for this very amazing conversation. It was truly wonderful to speak to you today, Rawan.
Thank you, Sania. Thank you for having me.
And for those of you who've tuned in, thank you so much for watching. I hope you will continue to follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us on all other social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Spotify. I'll see you again next week.